Hey, what's going on everybody? Remy Sovereign here, back with another video today, and what I wanted to talk about in today's new video is why one may feel stiff or tight and how to address this tightness or stiffness that one may be experiencing. So recently I've been having a lot of people message me and tell me that they are complaining about the stiffness or tightness within a localized region, whether that's in their lower back or in their hip. And they are attempting to address this via static stretches or maybe a yoga routine or some sort of stretching routine. And they're noticing very limited improvements or no improvements whatsoever. And they're wondering why. So firstly, guys, it's important to understand and it's important to ask yourself, why are you tight to begin with? So once you can identify the why, then you can develop the proper program or proper strategy to address that stiffness or tightness that you may be experiencing. So, for example, one may feel stiffness or tightness because of an injury that they may have, and that injury could be maybe causing some complications with regards to some muscles or a muscle itself, or maybe some nerves that could be causing some issues with regards to those muscles, causing them to contract, or just creating some sort of stiffness that may exist. Or it could be due to a structural or muscular imbalance issue that may exist. So for example, in an anterior pelvic tilt, which is a structural imbalance with regards to the hips that is commonly seen, and it's when the pelvis is rotated anteriorly. What ends up happening is because the pelvis is rotated anteriorly, the hamstrings will become tight. And so oftentimes people will go to stretch their hamstrings to address this tightness that they experience. However, stretching those hamstrings will not address the tightness that they're experiencing. Rather, they need to address that anterior pelvic tilt, and they need to take them out of that position to address that tightness that they're experiencing. So to address that anterior pelvic tilt, you may have some glute strengthening or some interior core strengthening or interior core work or glute work that you may need to work on, or maybe some hip flexor kind of flexibility or mobility to work on to address that anterior pelvic tilt. Then you can reduce that stiffness or tightness that you're experiencing. So point being there is that a structural issue is causing tightness, and doing static stretching with regards to that structural issue is not going to really have any effect whatsoever. And we can also look at poor motor patterns that may exist. This is another reason why someone may have tightness or stiffness, because of poor motor patterns, whether that's regards to walking, running, or just performing daily activities, because muscular imbalances could develop as a result of those poor motor patterns, and that's what could put us into those structural issues or poor structural positions to begin with. So point being, guys, is that when you have tightness or stiffness, it's important to understand why one has it. And then once you understand why, you can then develop the proper strategy to address that tightness or stiffness, because static stretching is not always the solution, and oftentimes it might not be. And in a lot of cases, it actually could make things worse if it's prescribed to an individual or if they're just doing it because they feel tight. So here's an issue that I commonly see or commonly hear about is with regards to physical therapists, chiropractors, and doctors. They will just quickly prescribe certain stretches to individuals that have tightness, and those individuals will never really ask why they have that tightness to begin with. And oftentimes those practitioners or clinicians often don't know really why, and they'll just prescribe these stretches, and then oftentimes the individual will not get better, or they may actually even get worse performing these stretches. So the whole point of this video, guys, is this: I wanted to kind of change people's mindset in the way you think about things. When you have stiffness or tightness, ask yourself why. Always just ask yourself why, whether that's with the clinician you're working with or PT, chiro, whoever it is, because if they can't explain why, then they're not really trained or educated or knowledgeable in terms of what they're actually treating or how to go about treating that stiffness. And that's an issue I commonly see. But point being, though, is once you can figure out the why, then you can kind of figure out the solution and strategy to your problem or why you're experiencing that stiffness or tightness. So for regards to, let's say, an injury, maybe it's a disc herniation that's maybe causing nerve pain, and that could be causing stiffness with regards to maybe an individual's hips or in their lower back. Would be important to address that injury that the individual is experiencing, and then you can go ahead and make that recovery. Then once you make that recovery, then that stiffness or tightness may be reduced. And that's the same for structural issues or motor patterns that may exist, is we have to understand why one is tight first, and then we can develop the proper program for them to address that. So that's just what I wanted to make for this video, because oftentimes I just see people just quickly performing static stretches, to attempt to reduce that tightness or stiffness, yet they get no improvements, or they get very acute improvements. And they wonder why. It's because they're not addressing it in the way that the tightness should be addressed, or that stiffness that may exist. And they just don't have the proper program for that issue. So that's it for this video, guys. Now, if you're someone that maybe has tightness or stiffness, and you've maybe been performing some stretches for a long period of time and you haven't really noticed any improvements at all whatsoever, I'd love to kind of hear about your story or whatnot. Or maybe you had some tightness or stiffness, performed some static stretches, noticed no improvements, but then you realized that it was because of the injury and because of maybe your structural imbalance that may have existed. And then you addressed that, and then you noticed that you had some reduced stiffness or tightness, and that stiffness went away. I'd love to hear about your story. And for that, guys, if you have any questions, comments, leave them below, and we'll wrap it up for this video. Hopefully this provides you with some information, guys, and just kind of looking to kind of change the way you guys think when it comes to addressing stiffness and tightness. Okay, guys, so that's it. I wish you guys all the best and a successful and productive day, and take care.